You did a podcast with 2 screenwriters. Any takeaways from that?
It was interesting. So the one woman was very nervous. One of the screenwriters was very nervous about pitching. She always felt self-conscious and, what should I do? What are the tips that I need? So I gave a lot of tips on how to really interact with your audience. It doesn't really matter who your audience is, but especially in any kind of emotional, artistic endeavor, it's about telling that story from a place of heart. Like, how does it matter to you? And to go in and to say, so this is one of the things I tell my speakers, and I believe I said it on the podcast, but if I didn't, this is a bonus. The story is never about you. It's about your North Star. So you need to identify that early on. When I sit down with a speaker, that's what we do early on. Where do you want to leave the audience? What's the one idea that you want them to think about or act upon when they leave the theater? What is it? What do you want them to share or do? And when they start to get nervous, the speaker, as they often do, that's a sign that their ego is taking over. And so the way I redirect it is to say, hey, this isn't about you. This is about the message that you have, that one thing that we identified at the end that you want them to walk away with and think about or act upon or share. And so when you start to feel nervous, you say, you know what, I have something that's bigger than me, it's greater than me, I'm on a mission, and I'm there to follow that North Star. And so for Amy, we identified that love was her mission for her TED Talk, and that she needed to share, that people needed to know that you can be loved and that you should love. It's never said in the talk, but that was what I'd say what is your message? She'd be love. And she was amazing that way. She embraced everything. And so when you go to pitch, that takes the pressure off of you. Because it's the story. What is your storyline? Why did you write these characters? Why did you do any of this, right? Is it social justice? What is it that you want to know? Is it women's issues? LGBTQ? What is it that you want us to know about these characters? And that's what I love about life right now too, is that the voices that have not had the stage are now starting to have the stage. But their messages are universal. They're emotional, and they're what we've all been through. And when you hit those emotional touch points, you can really spark your audience's imagination, feeling it, and then thinking about all the possibilities. So that's what I would want for people who are going in to pitch anything, but especially TV or film, to go in and to always know their North Star. What is the one thing you want that audience to know about what you're working on, what you care about this baby? And if you don't have anything that you feel like it's not totally hitting the mark, tell a personal story, right? And when you tell that personal story, it says so much more than facts and figures could ever say, because it tells you the layers of you, and it lets people walk away and go, oh, wow, I never looked at it that way, and that applies to my life too. So you create this connection. But again, I believe that's one of the things that I talked about in this podcast, to get over the fear. Some people's fears are so deep, they'll ask me, should I take medication? Should I take an antidepressant? Seriously. And I'm Miss Natural, I really should I take this cold medicine? I don't know. That much of a freak, right? I'm a supplement girl. So I say, take magnesium. Be careful with meditation before you speak, because meditation can really bring you into this beautiful Zen place, but you need a little bit of that energy, a little bit of that angst on the stage to keep you sort of percolating up there. And to share that feeling, you need to take that energy, and the meditation can make you flat. And so you have to strike that balance. And I had a speaker who meditated once, and I was like, oh no, stop meditating, no, ixnay on that, and what? But and I'm all for meditation, but do it early in the morning. Don't do it 15 minutes before you go on stage.
Right.
And so...
What about too much coffee, though? Because sometimes coffee can be good. I know this seems so trivial, but
no, not at all.
It actually can really shift in how you interact with people. And how you're perceived. And it could be that you've just had a great cup of like espresso and people are like, wow, you're intense, but you're just like, wow, I've just had this thing. And you think, yeah, everything's crystal clear and wonderful. But do you ever talk about caffeine moderation?
I do. So we're kind of like camels. I tell all of my speakers the day before, I want you to drink 8 glasses of water. Okay, all throughout the day, at least 8 full-size glasses.
Wow.
And then that way you'll be properly hydrated for the next day, the day that you speak, because we rarely drink the amount of water we're supposed to drink the day of, right? Because we're visiting, we're busy, we're traveling, we're whatever it is. Or backstage. So hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. If you drink caffeine, just drink the same amount that you always drink. And I say that speaking is a sport. So I want you to stretch out like an athlete. And I want you to eat light, so avoid the carbs. I want you to be slightly hungry when you deliver it.
Really?
Because that also helps with the clarity of the mind. The carbs can kind of bring you down a little bit. Hey, I feel good. How about another croissant over here on the table? You can have that afterwards as a reward. But before, really think light. Think a little piece of protein, a little bit of veggies, just something really crisp and clean. And then you'll deliver, your synapses will fire a lot better. And don't over caffeinate. If you drink 1 cup of coffee in the morning or 1 cup of tea, stick to that. No more, no less. Because otherwise, to your point, we get excited and we're like, oh, there's no water around. I'll just drink some more tea or some more coffee. And then that will tighten the vocal cords and dry them out. And you don't want that. You want to keep those vocal cords nice and warm and happy. And water is the thing that will do that. Also, herbal tea can dry out your throat, so be careful of the herbal tea. So it's not a trivial question. I'm kind of a maniac about it. And then the stretching is important too, because we get tight in the neck and we get tight in the lower back, especially because we're probably rehearsing the days before and even maybe that morning. So stretch it out and remember to breathe. As I say to my speakers, if you don't breathe, you can't smile. And if you don't smile, how will the audience know you're having fun? So always remember to breathe when you're working on all of these, just the rehearsing and then the actual day. And the pausing will help you do that. And I work with I take my speakers, we write the story when they're going to the stage, we write the story, we transfer that story and we begin to build slides. So it's actually more like a video. They click on emotional words. So they don't click at an end of a sentence or idea. They click on emotional words. So the image and the words, as the story crescendos, the image and the words marry to each other. So they really stick with the audience. So it's very deliberate. I have to work with my speakers with this technique all the way through so they can deliver. And the pauses are as important as the vocal variation, as the way they move and manage the stage.
What are some of those emotional words?
Well, it really depends on there isn't a particular word. It usually is the feeling. And so if there's I'm trying to think in some of my talks. Well, in Charis's talk, Rap on Trial, she talks about being an expert witness. And at this particular part of the story, she's sitting as the expert witness, and there's a lawyer there in front of her who's grilling her, and she has said, the evidence will prove the person who's on trial, this rap music artist, he's going to get off because the evidence is so clear that he didn't do this, that he's not guilty. And when she's presented all of her evidence, and this is the first time she's ever been an expert witness, she's unbelievable, this woman, the way she delivers ideas crisp and clear and concise. And so in the story, she's just told the jury why that he should be, let go. And the lawyer walks up to her and says, I can't remember exactly what he says, but he slams down a pistol on the stand in front of her and says, "Oh, really? Is this what you consider?" And and the audience sees the gun, the jury sees the gun, they see that moment. And so when we click for that, when she says, and we click for a picture of a pistol up close and personal. Wow. And boom, and so she really drives home that point. And she says, emotions trump logic every time. And we see that gun up there. Wow. And we feel it. So the story tells me where the images go.
Ah, okay. So there's not particular words.
Okay. No, it's really, thank you for asking to clarify that. But it's really the story is the foundation that tells me, oh my gosh, this needs an image. So,
and not as much text? Does that take away?
Text takes away because the audience doesn't know whether to read or listen to you. So you have to be very deliberate in your talk, in the way you use text. So again, in Charis's talk, there's a part where she talks about guns and about rappers. So if this was a white rapper who was on trial, it would be very different. And so we actually put white rapper plus gun equals he's gone astray, right? So I needed to do that. I came up with this idea. I was like, how do we visually show this? It wasn't the best way, but it's all we had, right? Mm-hmm. And then we showed black rapper plus gun equals a thug destined for prison. And so to see those words on there, and you can actually hear the audience gasp because the difference is startling. And, it can be a very powerful thing, but we animated those words so they couldn't read ahead.
Ah, okay.
Right? We spoon feed the audience the text as we need. Otherwise, they'll read ahead. And that will take them out of the story. So that's why and how I don't use text very often. And if I use it very, very strategically and sparingly.
When you're about to go into pitch or you have to give a speech, you're going to do an audition, whatever it is, there's the nerves. And I think there's some people that want to just be alone with the material and not speak to anybody because they're so like, I've got to get this right, I've got to get this right. And then there's others that they're just chatting away, and maybe that's part of their process. It makes them less nervous. What do you think?
Wow, as a kind of an ambivert, I don't know this. I don't trust those people who are talking away beforehand. I am just like a worrier, right? So I worry about my own speeches. So I gave a TED Talk, and I did the TED Talk because I was putting my speakers through all these paces, but I'd never tried them myself. So I tried the paces, and I suffered. Oh, did I suffer from just not ever doing it. I was like, I called each one of my speakers and I said, will you forgive me for everything I've ever done to you? They're laughing. Oh, you're funny. But because the process is difficult, right? It's a lot. But in the end, it's the thing that keeps you moving forward. But I can't imagine, and meeting your mark and crossing over the finish line, I can't imagine having chatted with anyone beforehand, right? That's one of the things in terms of speakers. To me, some of the most interesting speakers are either introverts or ambiverts because there's an inner world, right? That's what speaking is. It's toggling between this inner world and outer world. That's what writing is. And so I find that the introverts, the ambiverts tend to be more interworld reflective. And that's also very needed for an audience that doesn't always have a lot of time to take their own time to reflect. And I think that needs a little bit of time alone or with a coach, just sort of working on things beforehand.
Or even the day, like the hour of. Because sometimes I've been of a different school of thought. If I have to do something that I'm very nervous about, it actually can help me sometimes to converse with others in the waiting room, but then other times it spreads my energy too thin and then I'm not focused. So I really have to kind of pick and choose when I do that because I'm probably more of the introvert class, but just, I just wondered if there was, because, there's always the school of thought, well, that actor or that musician, whatever, they hang out in the back. They don't come to set. They're not, but maybe that's part of their process because there's a, real backlash. Well, they don't want to be part of the group. Maybe that's how they kind of preserve their who they are, their character, their energy. And I just wondered if you had thoughts on.
I feel those people.
Yeah, me too.
Because I don't have an infinite amount of energy. And, you know, extroverts will take the energy from the room and use it, right? So it's their fuel. My husband's an extrovert, and he's fueled by people. And I'm fueled by people in a certain way to a certain point. If that makes sense.
It does.
For all those introverts out there.
It does.
And extroverts, right? Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean that I don't love people and don't enjoy being with them. I thoroughly do, but I have a cutoff point.
Absolutely.
Right? An expiration point where I'm like, okay, gotta go recharge my batteries with the cats over there where it's quiet.
Or hiking.
Or hiking, right? Exactly. I love the outdoors, and that's a really great restorative thing to do. The beach, just go walk on the beach. I mean, so I need that quiet time and that reflective time to really process it all, because I'm also having very deep conversations, like probably therapy deep, right? But so it doesn't mean that there's one right way or one wrong way. It's really just, you have to touch base with you and say, how am I feeling right now? Did I overdo it? Was that too much? And it depends on the type of speech you're giving. So if you're giving a speech where you have to memorize everything, and all of my speakers have to, when they're the shorter speeches, they have to memorize everything.
Wow.
When they're the longer speeches, so some of my speakers speak for an hour, I have them craft the open and craft the close, because as I say to them, speeches are like flying. You know, takeoff and landings are the most dangerous, so you got to pay attention. So I really get them to craft that open and that close, which are very short, but then they got to know the middle. And some of my speakers actually will memorize, not verbatim, but darn near an entire hour. So I have some incredible speakers that are just able to do that. Very gifted. So it really depends. If you're giving a PowerPoint presentation, that's a whole different thing. That's, again, you might have a message that you craft for the beginning and a message that you want to leave, a heartfelt message you want to leave at the end. And then in the middle, you just sort of follow the trail of your slides that'll prompt you when you see them. And that's what I do with my speakers too. When they have slides, I say, let the image, the slide, be your guide. It will remind you what you're supposed to be saying here. And it does. It's amazing that way.
I think about someone like Steve Jobs. I mean, this is off topic, and if we don't want to...
Yeah.
But Steve Jobs was just such a great... I mean, you just kind of hung on his every word. When he gave a speech, I know Larry Ellison is similar from some of the speeches I've watched, and I'm not even in that world, but I just find that the way he delivers a story, the way his timing, different people really do have like this captivating, almost like rock star quality that you want to hang on their every word, even if you're not interested in the subject matter. And I'm not even sure if is that something someone's born with, or do they learn it over time?
I'm of the firm believer, under the firm belief of the fact that I think that we all inherently have it. It's just that some of us dig for it. Some of it comes more easily than others. Some of us have had traumas that keep it buried. I've had speakers that I just couldn't get to be natural, and I worked and worked and worked with them to really just be more present. When I had conversations with them, they were lovely and wonderful. But the minute they got on stage, it was like child star. And then, you know, so there became a lack of trust in themselves, that they weren't enough. I think that's probably the best message I can have. And I believe that when you look like you're conversational, like a Steve Jobs or Larry Ellison or any of the speakers that are just, you want to say, well, look, can we meet for a tea and talk, right?
I'm not even going to pitch you.
Right, exactly. I just want to hear more about what other stories you got for me, because they're really good and I'm engaged. Yeah. Let's go.
Right.
Right? They've worked at that. And they really, really, really enjoy it. I mean, that's the gift of storytelling for me, this sense of wonder. I really love to hear people's stories. And I wonder what it's like to be them, right? I can never be them, but I wonder what it's like to be them, and how much I see when they share these stories, how much we have in common. So for me, I believe we're all gifted. Now, how many of us use the gift and do the hard work that it takes to look like a Steve Jobs one day? He might have started that practice when he was young, right? Other people may have had to cover it up with the life circumstances, right? But it was important to him. I didn't know him, but I can tell you that if you sat down with him, he would tell you that it was important. And he felt, more than he saw, he felt the power of story and what it could do for not only himself, but the people around him, how it can motivate and inspire them and tear them down, right? So he was strategic. And when you tell stories for good, you can move mountains. You truly, truly can. And again, the audience is hungry for it. They need it. The audience meaning me, you, and everyone. We feel isolated and more alone than ever before. It doesn't matter that we have devices and ways to connect. We're lonely because we're not feeling what we need to be feeling. Seeing a picture or reading a post, that's nice and all. But to sit down with you here today and really connect and to hear all your beautiful, thoughtful questions and all the love that you put into Film Courage.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you.
You've been my inspiration, and watching this channel has been like, oh my God, I can't wait to watch another one. I drove all the way to Northern California and listened to the Ken.
Oh yeah, actually.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
amazing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But they're so thoughtful, these questions, and so insightful, and you've done a lot of personal work to get there.
Thank you.
You have, and that allows me to be able to, I say, oh, kindred spirit, and we're able to talk to each other because I know that you know and that you understand. It doesn't mean that when we're talking to other people who don't understand that we can't still have a conversation with them. They need us even more, right? Because they then know we aren't alone, right? We're filling ourselves up from the inside, and when we can do that, we can then teach others how to do that as well, to see the best in themselves. And that's what Film Courage does for me, seeing that, knowing I'm not alone when I'm scared out of my mind to go to the next step of writing, right? And experimenting for all the reasons that you could say, oh, I'm this or I'm that, or oh, how could I be? No, you're not alone. Just watch a video and you'll hear somebody else went through that too. Oh, okay, great. So,
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's why, it was David's idea for the blog, Film Courage, and then we started doing the podcast, and he puts equal amount of time into the questions as well, but that was why we wanted to do it, is we felt a connection as well, hearing other people's stories. And you're right, it's you can have Twitter streams and all these great videos, and it's not the same as seeing someone face to face and just hearing a story.
Yeah, without judging, right? Just sitting down and hearing a real story, because we're hearing so many manufactured stories, and I'm hearing, the word narrative being tossed around and hijacked in ways that I don't really appreciate, especially in the corporate world, because they're saying that they're telling stories, but stories really, they're about revealing something that you're a little bit afraid to reveal. To say, you know what, this took me a long time to get here, and I'm embarrassed to tell you that I still make these mistakes, but I do. And just by telling the story of your life, of a place you tripped up, and it's genuine, you're not telling it because you are looking for a strategy to get somebody to do something like a chess piece. You're doing it because you really want to let people know you're not alone. Life is an existential journey, and none of us are going to come out of it unscathed, right? So to know that you fell and skinned your knee too. You did? I did too. Oh my gosh, I didn't see that step, right? That's what story does. And that's my purpose in the world through story. That's my North Star, is to let the people around know they're not alone, and that please sit down and have heartfelt conversations with the people that you care about. Maybe strangers you don't even know. We're each other's angels, but we got to take the time and the risk of vulnerability to start to share and say, wow, I'm so glad that you crossed my path today.